The NBA Finals are set. The Golden State Warriors now know who they're going to play in the 2022 NBA Finals. I had to do an emergency pod. The moment is here. The Warriors haven't been to the NBA Finals in 3 years. And in all honesty, if you're not the Golden State Warriors, making the finals is a damn big deal. It's not easy to get there. The Golden State Warriors have been spoiled. We've all been spoiled to a certain degree, but bring on those riches. Bring on the spoils. 4 world titles in 8 years sounds damn nice. And that's what the Golden State Warriors are going to pursue. And I'm going to explain to you on tonight's show. Again, I'm doing this live. I'm going to address questions. I'm going to address comments. Throw it in the chat. And for people watching this or listening after the fact, I'm going to explain to everyone why the Golden State Warriors are going to be the heavy favorites. At least they should be. And they're going to beat the Boston Celtics. I'll explain why next. This is Locked On Warriors.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, it's where the game starts. And let's start right there. The odds makers already have game one set. The Warriors are favored by 3.5 points. The money line minus 166 for the Golden State Warriors, plus 146 for the Boston Celtics. The over-under 210.5. I'm honestly telling you right now, I think 3.5 is a spread the Warriors will cover. I think the Warriors are going to come out like gangbusters in game one, and they want to send a message. What people continually write off about when it comes to the Golden State Warriors is this. They have championship DNA. They have the experience that very few players and teams in the history of this game have. That is a 5 straight year run of NBA Finals appearances. 3 world titles in the process. They set the wins record in that process. They've now made 6 NBA Finals in the last 8 years. They could win their 4th world title in 8 years. These are all staggering numbers. This Golden State Warriors is greatness. And for some reason, and you're going to see this, whether we consider national media the Ringer, whether we consider it ESPN, Fox Sports, CBS Sports, NBC Sports, whatever you consider to be mainstream media, I guarantee you most of them are going to be picking the Celtics to win this series over the Golden State Warriors, despite the fact that the Golden State Warriors have home court advantage, despite the fact that they have one of the greatest players in the history of the game in Stephen Curry, despite the fact they have one of the greatest defensive players in the history of the NBA in Draymond Green, despite the fact they have one of the most clutch shooters in the history of this game in Klay Thompson, despite the fact that they have a former number 1 pick who's suddenly emerging as his own, who has defended Luka Doncic handily, who defended John Morant mightily. You're going to count him out? You're going to count this team out? Kevon Looney in closing game against the Memphis Grizzlies grabbed 22 rebounds, 11 of those offensively. In the closeout game against the Dallas Mavericks, he grabbed 18 rebounds. Yet you're going to sit here and talk to me about Robert Williams? The Golden State Warriors are going to win this series. It's not if, it's when. The only thing I'm still torn about is how many games it's going to happen. Corey, I'm doing great. Today's day 6 of me battling company video. Thank you for the chat. I'm finally starting to get on the upswing a little bit here. This is something that's I feel like the symptoms are going to linger for like weeks, but I actually went for a 2-mile walk today. I'm doing all right. But the bottom line is this. The Golden State Warriors, when people come to me and they say, like, I was on a radio show earlier today doing a guest hit, and they asked me, like why do you think the Warriors are going to win? Why did you pick them since last August? I picked them in August because they have championship pedigree, because their 3 best players are 3 of the greatest players in the history of this game, and they're still in their prime. I picked them because they have one of the best coaches in the history of this game. I picked them because their supporting cast is as strong as it's been since 2015. That was honestly the one weakness with the Kevin Durant version of this dynasty was that the bench was weak. They had a staggering starting five, but when you went to the bench outside of Iguodala and Livingston, it was thin. This team is deep. This team can go 11-12 and run you out the building. I'm going to read out the Celtics roster in a moment. And when I'm done reading that roster, and when I talk about the Celtics roster, I'm referring more so to the players we're realistically going to see in the NBA Finals. And I'm going to ask everyone who thinks the Celtics are going to win this series, how the hell are the 8 players, maybe 9, who play for the Celtics in the NBA Finals, how the heck are those guys going to score enough points to beat the Warriors? How? Because while the Celtics are a damn good defensive team, they are. All right. They were the number 1 defensive rated team in the NBA this year. But the Warriors were the number 1 defensive rated team in the NBA until Draymond Green's injury. And last time I checked, this team is back and healthy. They came back at the perfect time, meaning right when the postseason started, meaning right when the real season, the season that counts, started. But for some reason, what happened from October through December and early January just doesn't count anymore. We're not going to count that, even though it's part of the regular season. We're just going to forget about 2015 through 2020 or 19 or whatever. We're just going to forget about it because it's convenient to forget about it because recency bias is how we roll, apparently. I'm going to play some chat. Going to post some chat comments here. Trey Young says Warriors Celtics finals finna be a movie. It might. It also might go Warriors in 5. It might. It could go 7. Right now I'm torn, man. Like my brain says Warriors in 5. My heart says Warriors in 7. What I mean by that is it's the NBA Finals. I understand Stephen Curry's legacy is fully at stake here. If he gets that Finals MVP, people are going to really start turning that dial in terms of the respect factor, in terms of the legacy factor. The Warriors winning their 4th title in 8 years, you're really entering elite company by getting that 4th title as a team. 2002 Lakers finished with 3. Spurs got 5. That was impressive. And that'll be the next mark. But there are very few teams in the history of this game who have hit 4 championships. The Warriors are aiming high here. And I'm nervous about that. I want my team to win. So my heart is like nervous because I do respect the Celtics. I do. Again, they're the number 1 rated defensive team in the NBA. Jason Tatum is an elite player. But my brain is telling me, look at these 2 teams on paper. And how could you possibly sit here and tell me that the Celtics stand a chance in this series? I'll explain why. Besides the fact that the Warriors have a better defense, the Warriors' offense is nothing like what the Celtics have seen in these playoffs so far. John Blackman writes, they should be favorites because both have great defense, but Dub's offense is far superior. John Blackman, you are 100% correct. 100% correct. The Celtics have not seen anything like this in the playoffs so far. The Miami Heat are average at best offensively. And in a tight game 7, where it's very hard to score, the Celtics gave up 96. Add 15 to that for the NBA Finals, minimum, with the Golden State Warriors. Who have the Celtics seen yet of the likes of Stephen Curry, Klay Thompson, Jordan Poole? Last I checked, Andrew Wiggins had the biggest dunk of the postseason. Last I checked, Kevon Looney and Draymond Green, who are not stout offensive players, but they know how to score. They have solid post-up games. Otto Porter Jr. is going to be coming back. Let's not forget about Jordan Poole, who's going to be vitally important simply because he could break that defense down by routinely penetrating and attacking. Who have the Celtics face? I mean, look, the Nets, yeah, you had Kevin Durant, all-time great, and Kyrie, who's had a weird year, but that's all they had. They're a 2-headed monster who plays no defense whatsoever. And so all the Celtics have to do is just make sure those 2 guys were shut down, and you win the series. The Bucks would have beaten them if Chris Middleton is in the series. The Celtics will not be here. This was supposed to be Bucks Warriors, but Chris Middleton sprains his knee severely. You damn right, Arunas. We are back. Absolutely. The only reason I'm not saying Dubs and 6 is because for some reason, and this is just my instincts kicking in here, I just don't see the Warriors finishing this thing off in Boston. And it's not really instincts. I'll tell you why I feel that way. It's because Steve Kerr said something, and thank you, Commodity Monster, for that comment again, picking the Dubs and 6. Steve Kerr is just incredibly intelligent and incredibly aware of the human nature aspect of the Golden State Warriors. And what I mean by that is he sees each game individually, but he also sees a series as a collective whole. And game 5 against the Grizzlies is a perfect example of that. Game 4 against the Mavericks is a perfect example of that. Steve Kerr said in the post-game press conference that this is not the same dominating team that they had with Kevin Durant, and they're not. This is a team that's going to have to meticulously beat their opponent. And whether that means in 5 games, whether that means 6 games, maybe 7, we'll see. But the Warriors are so successful at home, and that's one of the many advantages they have in this series is home court advantage. They're currently undefeated in the postseason. I got to look at I believe the Warriors had the second best home record in the regular season. I'm just double checking that right now. They did. Yeah, they had the second best home record, just a game behind the Suns. They're undefeated at home. Chase Center, bravo to the crowd there. You've done good so far. Keep it going. Joe Lacob, handle those tequila shots. Spruce it up a bit. Make it añejo. Throw a lime in there while you're at it. Organic, please. That crowd has been solid. The Warriors are tough to beat at Chase Center. Damn near impossible. And look, the Celtics seems good. I don't want to take anything away from them. It's just the Warriors are that much better. And again, it's when I started doing these live shows some months ago, I could get to everyone, but I love everyone for like jumping in and commenting a lot. I can't get to all of them. I'll try to get as many as possible. Strength in Numbers 2021 says, I'm so nervous, man. We got to get this chip. Yeah, I mean, the nerves are there. I'm feeling the same nerves as I felt against the Grizzlies, but not as much. I'm telling you, the Grizzlies are a damn tough team. I'll say it to the end. I think the Grizzlies were the toughest team for the Golden State Warriors. I really do. They're deeper than the Boston Celtics. They have better shooting than the Boston Celtics. They have more size than the Boston Celtics. For everyone who's afraid of Robert Williams, what'd you think of like Steven Adams? What'd you think of Brandon Clark? I mean, what did you think of I'm totally brain farting on their starting center's name right now, Tillman. And I'm still forgetting another big they had just because the series is so far in the past now. But the Celtics are not a tall team. Outside of Robert Williams, they don't have size. And don't worry, the Warriors are going to schematically prepare for Robert Williams, a player who, by the way, is not an offensive threat. That is a massively huge difference between him and, say, a Nikola Jokic. He's not going to exploit anyone with his offense. Yeah, he's a great rebounder, solid defender, no doubt. But you don't have to worry about him on the offensive side of the ball. And the Warriors have some toughness themselves. You're right, Totes McGoats. National media does suck. And strength in numbers again, you're adding, they're already downing us. Yeah, they're going to. And that's what's going to make this so much sweeter when it's all over. I got to give some love to sponsors real quick here. BetOnline. Again, I mentioned a moment ago, the line for game 1, Warriors minus 3.5, which I do think they're going to cover. And more lines will come out as we go along. But the Warriors are the favorites in this series. And national media, I just don't understand it, man. I called out Zach Lowe tonight on Twitter because Zach Lowe is just gushing about the Celtics team. Barely said a word about the Warriors. I know he dedicated one show to him recently. Big whoop. It's so transparent how these people really feel about the Warriors. It's just I don't know if they just stubbornly don't want them to win. I don't know if their pride is kicking in because they picked against them and now they just have to stick to their guns to the end and then come up with some creative way to wiggle themselves out of making a horrible call. I don't know what the strategy is, but most of them are utterly afraid of ever going one-on-one with someone who could actually talk hoops with them. I promise you that. But anyway, BetOnline, longtime sponsor of the program. They continue to be the number one source for all your betting needs and sports information. Find all the latest odds, news, and sports developments, including this year's basketball playoffs, Major League Baseball scores, fights, and even next season's NFL futures. They're your continued source for all your sporting wagering information, from live betting to playoffs, esports, and more. Head to the website today, BetOnline. It's where the game starts.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. Make sure to go check out Locked On NBA Big Board. Host Rafael Barlow from NBA Draft Junkies and author of the NBA Big Board newsletter is joined by Richard Stayman, Sam Ferris, and Leif Thulin, giving fans an in-depth look into the NBA draft, mock draft, player rankings, and of course, the big boards. It's free and available wherever you get podcasts. I got to get back to the chat here. There's a lot of people coming in. I want to look at comments. Totes me goats. I like that. Dubs in 5.5 games. Good call. Again, I think it's going to be 5 or 7. I don't have one definitive in place yet. What I will say repeatedly is this. My brain says Warriors in 5. I can see this being a series similar to the Mavericks, similar to the Nuggets. I could also see it going 7, with the Warriors' strategy being play the long game, win your home games. That's all you got to worry about. I just don't know if they're going to win in Boston. A lot of people in the chat saying Dubs in 6. Corey chiming in saying, always great to see you. Huge fan of the show. Thank you. I am fired up about the finals myself, Corey. Wildly fired up. It's been 3 years. And the truth of the matter is, the last time the Warriors went to the finals, I don't think anyone expected them to win it. I don't think anyone expected the Warriors to make the finals in 2019 because Kevin Durant was hurt. Sweeping the Trailblazers was a borderline miracle. Finishing off the Houston Rockets that year was a borderline miracle without Kevin Durant. So when it came time for the NBA Finals, at least until Durant made that cameo appearance, and when they were down 3-1, and even though he tragically tore his Achilles that game, they still won, and they were down 3-2, but then Clay was also out. And point being, like that, I was not really that fired up for that finals, and I think a lot of people were exhausted. 5-year run's exhausting for everyone; it drains on you. But I'm pumped about this one. This team is special. This run is special. And just the fact that you have all these people doubting the Warriors again. Yeah, it's going to feel good to rub it in their face, isn't it? Trey Young says Kendrick Perkins already picking Boston. Yeah, he's actually flipped the tune lately. He's given Steph a lot of love. A lot of people are going to doubt the Warriors. This is true. I'm looking at the chat right now, seeing if there's anything like a fresh take. I want to say something real quickly as well. First of all, tomorrow's show, Kevin Dana joins me every Monday, but I got a special treat as an additional guest. Former Golden State Warriors coach and GM Gary St. Jean is going to join the program as well on the formal day 1 of Warriors NBA Finals week with Locked On Warriors. So Gary St. Jean, I've never interviewed him. I'm excited for that. And he's going to come on along with Kevin Dana, the voice of the Santa Cruz Warriors, and sometimes the voice of the Golden State Warriors. He fills in for Tim Roy, and he also fills in. I don't know if he fills in for Bob Fitzgerald. Here's a comment from Orlando 28. In the playoffs, the Dubs are 6th in defensive rating and 6th in field goal percentage defense. Number 1 offensive, everything, though. That is true. But you also got to look at the fact that the Mavericks put up a ton of points. Luka was just damn near unstoppable. The Mavericks, I think, skewed those numbers a lot just because they're such a 3-point chucking team. When you play a team like that, they're going to put up points. And that number 1 offensive everything is vitally huge, though, because, again, the Celtics have never seen anything like that. The closest thing maybe were the Nets, where they had Durant and Kyrie Irving, but that team was weak outside of those two. The Bucks had Giannis, who's not even an outside threat, really. Drew Holiday, who I love personally, had his moments, but that Bucks team beats them if they had Chris Middleton. And then the Miami Heat, I mean, they're known for defense. They're not an offensive threat. Jimmy Butler, I think, was held to below double digits for 3 straight games before these final 2 like heroic Superman performances. The point is they haven't seen anything like this Warriors team yet. What is this here? Ronald Armstrong writes, enough with Curry winning MVP. Golden State Warriors play team ball. You can have both. I mean, Stephen Curry's always been a team-oriented player. He gets his assist numbers. He just has Draymond Green as an additional facilitator on the offensive side of the ball, so he doesn't get those 10 assists a game like a lot of point guards do, but he facilitates, man. Stephen Curry is the embodiment of unselfish play. So I think Ronald, he could win MVP and the Warriors could play team ball and win. I've never seen Stephen Curry be a selfish type player. Um, and I hear you, folks. I hear you. Carla Davis writes, I'm nervous for my Warriors. The Celtics have always made me nervous. I'm here to tell you, don't be that nervous. This Warriors team is that good. I'm gonna read off to you real quick who the Celtics have that's so scary. All right, on their offensive side of the ball. Jason Tatum, scary. He's really good. All right. But the Warriors just faced Luka Doncic, much scarier. The Warriors faced the MVP of the NBA, two-time MVP, Nikola Jokic in the first round. That was scarier. John Morant averaged way more points in the regular season than Jason Tatum did, and they seem to be able to handle him pretty easily. I think I'd say John Morant is a scarier offensive player than Jason Tatum. It's just Jaw's not there defensively yet, and you saw what happened with the Grizzlies when he went out. But Desmond Bane is a damn good offensive player. Dylan Brooks, you saw him light it up in that game 6. He was off for some of that series, but he's a dangerous offensive player. I haven't done my research on the Grizzlies yet. I've kind of like put them in the back seat already. But my point is the Warriors have already faced weapons in this postseason. Wiggins has shown he can handle it. Now, Jaylen Brown is a solid number 2. But the Warriors are going to throw two things at him. One is going to be Klay Thompson, who's getting better and better each series. And Klay Thompson struggled the most against quicker guards, against lightning fast slasher type guards. Jaylen Brown is not someone that's going to blow past Klay Thompson. Klay Thompson will stay in front of Jaylen Brown. He's going to make Jaylen Brown, who I believe shot 35% from 3 this year. Okay, not great, but he's going to force Jaylen Brown to shoot outside shots. And Gary Payton II, all signs are indicating he's going to be ready to go for game 1. That's going to be huge. Huge. Because you don't need his offense out there. And with that elbow injury, he's still going to get his, whether it's going to be with putbacks, whether it's going to be with lobs. So my point is the Celtics' two biggest offensive weapons are Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. Respect. But it's nothing the Warriors haven't seen before. And the Warriors defense, which again was rated higher than the Celtics and remains one of the most underrated aspects of this whole dynasty, was number 1 in the NBA until January when Draymond Green got injured. So everything after January, you can no longer count for this Golden State Warriors team. And I guess that's where it's so disappointing about the national media putting so much weight on this regular season because they're cherry picking. They're ignoring the fact that the Warriors, when healthy, were the best team even in the regular season. They started 18-2. They pounded the Phoenix Suns in Phoenix on Christmas Day, where the record at that point was 27-6. Draymond Green gets injured early January. First time ever in his career with the Warriors. What'd you expect was going to happen? And yet, despite that, they were still playing above 500. Despite that, they still finished with home court advantage in the NBA Finals, the third best record in the NBA. And I'm sorry, they're a better team. Let me run through the rest of the roster here real quick. Al Horford, yeah, he's interesting. In tonight's game, he scored 5 points. 1 for 6 from 3, 2 for 9 from the field. That's going to scare the Warriors. Marcus Smart, okay offensive player, streaky. He was 3 for 10 from 3 tonight. You don't think the Warriors can handle him? On the offensive side? Robert Williams III, a man who put up 1 3-point attempt the entire season? And then you go to their bench, you have Grant Williams, no relation to Robert, who until this year I'd never heard of in my life. He's not an offensive weapon. Derek White doesn't scare me. Derek White, who's like their number 7 guy off the bench. He's okay. I mean, he he's basically their sixth man, and he's okay. All right, but nothing to write home about. Does Derek White honestly scare you, Dub Nation? Does that make you nervous? And then the only other player that played in Game 7 tonight, and the way you got to look at Game 7 of this Celtics Heat game is that's your NBA Finals because every possession counts, every game counts. The magnitude, the importance is exemplified tenfold with every moment of the NBA Finals. So you're not playing scrubs out there. What you saw in Game 7 tonight for the Celtics is what you're going to be seeing for the majority of that series. And I'm looking at the rest of this roster for the Celtics. Thies, I mean, maybe you might see him, Daniel Thies, or is it Thies? I can't remember. Who's 6'9", one of their biggest players. You might see him, but I think he's going to be too much of a liability. You have Peyton Pritchard, who can shoot the three. He's like their one pretty dangerous three-point shooter, but he also stands all of 6'1" against a much longer, taller, bigger Warriors team in that regard. They don't scare me, folks. That is not a roster that screams to me world champion. That's a roster that screams to me Eastern Conference champion. What's going on with the chat here? Where are we at with time? I have another sponsor here real quick. Today's show is also brought to you by, oh wait, is that it? Yeah, that's it. All the rest are going to be like digitized. So we can just keep rolling here. Let's see. Ronald Armstrong says the Celtics won the Eastern Conference Finals. So what? What's your point? Yeah, I know that. So what? Let me say something else real quick too. The NBA, the way it's constructed right now, the entire goal is parity. All right. The NBA wants an even playing field. And they were hoping it started 10 years ago. But the Warriors, between a lot of luck, Stephen Curry's ankle injuries earlier in his career resulting in cheap contracts, Klay Thompson not playing well enough to get a max deal his first time out, Draymond Green being an anomaly of a player where even now he's not getting max deals. They lucked out and got Kevin Durant because they had the room to sign him. And they lucked out because they drafted three of the greatest players ever in the history of the game. So while you have teams like the Celtics, while you have teams like, I don't know, the Suns, Mavericks, Grizzlies, whoever you want to name it, you're not going to see, it's going to be very rare moving forward to see teams with three superstars on their team. And you can make the argument the Warriors have four with Andrew Wiggins as well. He is an all-star starter. And he's playing like an all-star again. The Warriors right now are just better. And someday it might catch up to them. Maybe it won't, given how amazing they draft. Their scouting department is second to none. Jordan Poole was picked number 28. I mean, so was Jacob Evans III. But when you're picking that low, you're not going to strike gold every time. Kevon Looney, I think, was the number 30 pick. My point is, the Warriors are just at another level. So people are talking about the Eastern Conference this year as being so much better. First of all, they were not the superior conference to the West. They were better than in years past. But coming out of the Eastern Conference is not something that makes me go, oh, like I'm scared. The Eastern Conference. Sorry. The Miami Heat had the best record in the East this year. And they're not exactly a symbol of an all-time great. They're just not. And for the Celtics to squeeze their way out of that, took them 7 games to beat the Heat. I mean, it sounds like I'm disrespecting the Heat, but maybe I am a little bit. The Heat just are not a team that I think back on and compared to other great teams, and they don't make me reflect and go, wow, the Heat. I mean, Jimmy Butler, yes, I love Jimmy Butler, but it's just like Joel Embiid said, they need a superstar. So the Celtics coming out of the East, it's not a big deal to me. I'm sorry. The X factors from Totes Bagoat, he writes, would be GP2, Otto Porter Jr., who is awesome, and Iguodala. And there are reports. I'm hearing a lot of conflicting reports about Andre Iguodala, but we might see him. And talk about another huge bonus if he play. I'll go out on a limb and say this: if the Warriors are completely healthy, meaning if Andre Iguodala is actually playing like Andre Iguodala, if the Andre Iguodala who played against the Denver Nuggets in the first round shows up, if Gary Payton II can play the same defense he's been playing and just be okay offensively, if Otto Porter Jr. is healthy, Warriors in 5. Done. Like, I think the Warriors are just so much deeper They match up with the Celtics very well. They have too many offensive weapons, and they're going to run that team out. People love to always make excuses for the Golden State Warriors in terms of their luck each year. Each year, people have excuses, and it's always, well, this guy was hurt. This guy was hurt. Do people ever stop and reflect on the fact that the Warriors system exhausts the opposition so much that these injuries are caused because of the high tempo, because of the amount of energy they're exerting, because they're stretching the limits of their of their physical bodies? You don't think that's going to happen with the Celtics? I'm not the more I'm hearing myself talk, the more convinced I'm making myself that my brain should be the one driving this, not my heart. Because my heart's saying 7. My heart's saying like it's the Celtics. But in reality, I'm only nervous because the Warriors are this close to another trophy. So those X factors told me goats, you're absolutely right. Some people are asking about GP2 if he's going to come back. No, there's going to be no official word until probably day before or day of. Southern Cape Brown writes, "Hey Cyrus, Dubs and Six, kudos. I just don't know if the Warriors will win in the Garden. My prediction right now is the Warriors will not lose a single home game, and either they're going to split in the Garden, or if Boston wins games 3 and 4, it's probably going to go 7. You might be right. If they win in 6, great. I hope so. James Frost, you're absolutely right. One of the most important variables in the postseason, especially this deep into it, is experience and positive experience of that. Now, the Celtics, if there's one thing about them that makes me a little nervous, maybe 2 things. One is they are athletic, they are aggressive, they are long, but they're not as athletic as the Grizzlies were. They're not as long as the Grizzlies were, but they do have experience. Not championship experience, but deep postseason experience. That gives me a little pause. But that also is the reason why, again, if I'm very convinced now, just from doing this show, that if the Warriors are completely healthy, they're going to win this in 5. And you're right, James Frost. Steve Kerr has 8 rings as a player and coach. Been there and done that. Now, GTC Reels writes, Jordan Poole is our weakest defender. True. But this is also why the Celtics just don't worry me as much. I just listed off their entire roster, at least the realistic roster the Warriors are going to be facing in the NBA Finals. And the only matchup that is concerning a little bit for Jordan Poole would be if he were switched up onto Jason Tatum. But again, the Warriors are going to have, by the time the series starts, a week to not only rest, but also to prepare for the Boston Celtics. And you better well believe that they're preparing for that likelihood of switches onto Jordan Poole. And one thing I also saw in that series against the Heat is that you could still penetrate against that Celtics defense. They're long, they're aggressive, but they do give up points. All right. They're not some wall made out of iron. Like, they are human beings that you can blow by. The Warriors are excellent at that. Stephen Curry, especially. And Jordan Poole could be a weak link defensively. Yeah, he'll be the reason why the Celtics put some points up, but I don't think he's as bad as people are making him out to be either defensively. Like the Mavericks were just a horrible matchup for him. I don't think he was that bad against the Grizzlies defensively. Totes McGoat's right. I was watching the Locked On Heat a while ago. Yeah, my predecessor, Wes Goldberg. I was hoping to do a crossover with him, but it's not going to happen. He looks so defeated. He also thought the series would be over after 6. Who do you think is going to guard Stephen Curry? Tony writes. That's a great question. It's probably, I mean, Marcus Smart would be my guess. I mean, Marcus Smart is the reigning defensive player of the year, even though he doesn't come anywhere close to Draymond Green. But it's almost definitely gonna be Marcus Smart. But that's another thing. I take psychological factors into play especially when it comes to NBA basketball, just because there's so few human beings on the court facing each other. You don't think they're going to remember that Marcus Smart dive? I know it was not intentional, but it was reckless. It was dangerous. It was sketchy, and it took Stephen Curry out for a month. You don't think they're going to be motivated? You don't think they're going to be riled up and ready to go for that? So it's going to be most likely Marcus Smart guarding Stephen Curry. I could see Jason Tatum handling the responsibility. I could see Jaylen Brown handling the responsibility. I could maybe see Derek White on him every once in a while. But I don't see anybody stopping Steph. I just don't. It's a laugh when I think about that. CTC Reels writes Gary Payne II, Bielitsa, Klay Thompson, Otto Porter Jr., and Jordan Poole is my second best lineup, or is my best second lineup at 6 minutes when Steph sits. That's a fantastic second lineup. Moses Moody might see some minutes. Wouldn't surprise me if Jonathan Kuminga sees some minutes. I do hope we see Bielitsa. Great things happen in this postseason when he plays. I really do. Oh, thank you, Orlando 28. I'm brain farting on Jaren Jackson Jr. Yeah, I still got the fog in my head, man, from this company video. Thank you. Yeah, Jaren Jackson Jr. Dude's 7 feet. How could you possibly sit here and tell me the Grizzlies were not the second best team this postseason? People looked at me like I'm crazy when I said that at the beginning of the playoffs. A lot of people still do say that, but they're a lot more quieter about it now. I want to see what else is in these comments. GTC Real, you make a good point. The Grizzlies series was tough and it was close, but it was over in 6 games. Warriors still won, and they didn't have home court advantage. So that's also the reason why the Celtics make me the most nervous out of all the teams not named the Memphis Grizzlies. I ranked the if I had a power rankings when the playoffs started, I had the Warriors 1, obviously, but number 2 was the Grizzlies. And then I was toying with number 3 between the Celtics and Bucks. Like, I kept flip-flopping, and then when Chris Middleton was out with the injury, then I had the Celtics as number 3. But again, it's going to be a challenge. You also don't have, hopefully you won't have the opposition being riled up over misreporting. Whether or not Stephen Curry said whoop that trick, that was not meant to be publicized, by the way. So hopefully we won't have that happening again, where you have the other team riled up and motivated. Words do matter. I hope you folks watched The Last Dance. It should have hopefully confirmed what I've been hearing for years from players, that players look for anything to motivate them. You just saw the Miami Heat win Game 6 because Draymond Green said he thinks the Celtics are going to win that. I got to play that clip again for you real quick here. Draymond Green is so intelligent. Like, he is one of the smartest human beings on the planet who plays in the NBA. And he's smart, period. You can't fake it in this media game, in his quote unquote new media. You can't fake it when you're sitting there talking for like an hour, man. It's hard. People will see through you. And this was him again, just to replay that. This was after the Warriors won the Western Conference Finals. And this was Draymond Green saying he thinks the Celtics will win.
It's still undetermined who you're going to play next round. Who would you like to play?
I mean,
be honest.
I think both teams are tough. Boston causes problems, especially offensively.
Draymond.
Their defense is incredible.
How long we been born? What's the honest answer, Draymond?
You're asking me who I want to play. I'm going to tell you who I think we're going to play. We're going to play Boston.
Okay.
That's who we're going to play.
Thank you.
There you go. The dude is smart. Mohan Krishna writes, the team which wins the rebounding battle wins the finals. Well, the Warriors have won that in every round. So, I mean, the Grizzlies were easily the best rebounding team entering the playoffs, and the Warriors crushed them. They lost 1 game out of 6 in rebounding. Celtics are not changing that. Emilio writes, I wonder if I'm seeing right. You got to be more specific. I don't know what that means. Sorry, there's so many comments here. I'm going to scroll to the bottom. Could you please repeat your comment if you really want me to see it? House of Reason writes, what do you think happens to the narrative if the Warriors win, but Curry does not win MVP? That's a great question. I think what's going to happen is you'll still have doubters. The haters will still have fuel. Because hate is just a part of human nature, sadly, unfortunately. But I think it's still going to shut a lot of people up. 4 rings is you're just in such select company with 4 rings. I don't think Steph's gonna care that much. He might care a little bit. Dude is human. But, I I it I am so certain in this. If the Warriors win the title as expected, Steph will get his MVP. I really do believe that. AC writes, "Did you notice most of the Heat bench almost standing on the court in that game? Will there be any bench shenanigans in the finals?" I haven't seen that type of conduct from the Boston Celtics, and I do agree that officials should start getting involved in that. I don't know why they just let it happen and then they wait for the NBA to issue fines. I don't get that part of it. Start issuing techs. I don't get that. And also GTC Reels, you bring up another great point. The Celtics are beat up. They are. Marcus Smart is hobbling. Jason Tatum tonight didn't have a great scoring game. I mean, he was phenomenal in terms of just his playmaking. He only had 6 assists. It felt like he had 12. But in 46 minutes, he only scored 26 points. I think a part of that is his shoulder, and that's on his shooting side as well, is banged up. That could play a part. Robert Williams III had arthroscopic surgery on his knee to repair his meniscus. It was what, like a month ago? I mean, or maybe it was like a month and a half ago, something like that. It wasn't that long ago. So they are banged up. You're absolutely right. Great call. Strength in numbers adds. We need Clay to be consistent. It would help. It would help. You're right. He seems to only thrive when it matters most. But I have faith in Clay. He's like in the NBA Finals, he usually steps up. And here's another huge benefit, folks. I'm glad you actually raised that. You brought that up because this is another massive perk. The NBA final schedule is going to be night and day versus the conference final schedule. What I mean by that is in the conference finals, you had games every other day. And who that hurts the most are shooters because fatigue affects shooting the most. It's a huge reason why you see the Warriors struggle. It's a huge reason why back in 2016 in game 7. So sorry for bringing that up. Still haunts me to this day. Will haunt me probably forever. But those threes were going in at the end because they were exhausted. But in the NBA Finals this year, anyways, I can't remember what the schedule was like there, and I'm trying to find this link now for the schedule. But if I'm not mistaken, they have 2 nights, sometimes 3 between each game. Here I gotta let me see if I can find this real quick while I'm talking, which is kind of hard. Okay, so game 1 will be June 2nd. Game 2, I believe, will be Saturday, June 4th. Or I'm sorry, Sunday, June 5th. So 3 days. And then game 3 will be June 8th, 4 days. Game 4 will be June 10th. Okay, so that's a quick turnaround there. That's the first time in the series I've seen that. My point is there's going to be a lot of days off here. A lot of days off. And that's going to benefit someone like Clay tremendously because he's going to have the energy. He's going to have the lift to make the shots that you saw him routinely brick. By the way, the gap between game 4 and 5 is 3 days again. And then the gap between game 5 and 6, 3 days again. And they're adding an extra day for travel. But the point is that that extra day of rest is going to benefit the Warriors tremendously just because it's going to help their shooters. DP writes, Steph could be robbed again. He could. But honestly, what do you care more about? The Warriors winning a title or Stephen Curry winning finals MVP? I guarantee you, I know what Steph's answer is, a 4th world title. Ricardo Davidson writes, you need to have the appropriate level of fear. Why? The last I checked, only one of these 2 teams has a dynasty worth of experience under their belt. What have the Celtics done to instill fear? Have the number 1 rated defense this season, which is something the Warriors should have had if it were not for Draymond's injury? Please elaborate on why there should be an appropriate level of fear. Maybe more specifically, what appropriate means to you, Ricardo, please. G. Martinez writes, I'm convinced the Warriors are the best rebounding team in the NBA. Why shouldn't you be? Kevon Looney had 22 in game 6 against the Grizzlies, had 18 in game 5 against the Mavericks. The Warriors as a whole out-rebounded the Mavericks, I believe, in every game that series. They out-rebounded a tremendous rebounding team in the Memphis Grizzlies in all but one game. Here's one thing that I need to make very clear for everyone. When the Warriors care, meaning where there is urgency on the Warriors side, they never lose if they're healthy. If they're healthy and they actually want to win, the regular season doesn't matter much to them anymore. That's why I do not take regular season statistics seriously with this Warriors team. I can't, because all they care about are championships. But when they care, when the urgency is real, when they are fully motivated, over the last 8 years, undefeated. The only thing you could bring up to me are Game 7 of 2016. Sorry, but Steph was hobbled bad. Iguodala was hobbled bad. The team had no center. Andrew Bogut was out for the last 2 games. And then 2019, but we all know the massive amount of injuries they suffered there. This team does not lose when they're healthy. This is one of the greatest teams in NBA history. If anyone should fear anyone, it's the Celtics fearing the Warriors. You're absolutely right, G. Martinez. Hey, Coach. Good to see you. Dan Coach Emilio. I'm getting there. I'm definitely going to be joining the Krug show. Glad you reminded me. Every Warriors post game, I join my buddy Larry Krueger and his cast of scallions for a fantastic party. The Warriors post game show. Ricardo Davidson writes, Steph hasn't been shooting that well. Not many players do when it's this deep in the postseason. I will retort by saying he makes them when they count. Klay Thompson, you're right, has not been shooting great except when he had to. He shot damn well in that closeout game. And I do have respect Orlando 28 for Ime. I do. He's a fantastic coach. I think that speaks almost more so or equally to Brad Stevenson stepping into the GM role there. It's his hire, and this is his roster he constructed. But I mean, Steve Kerr is. I mean, look at the resume. I mean, and his staff is incredible. I mean, there's a reason why teams routinely poach. Mike Brown's going to the Kings. Kenny Atkinson's probably going to go to the Charlotte Hornets. I don't know for sure, unless they filled that already. I'm sorry if I'm misinformed on that. DP writes there's a bias to younger players. Yes. And the recency bias that you mentioned, DP, that's real. But that's also illogical. Like, to me, that's a fault on the part of any like analyst, expert, whatever role, columnist, pundit, whatever you want to call the person who's espousing opinions about the Warriors or about the NBA or sports. Recency bias is a fallacy, man. You can't just look at the last 2 weeks and go, oh, based on that, I'm going to make judgments. You got to look at the bigger picture. It's utterly ridiculous. It's ignorant to have the recency bias. I try my best to not have that because it's an easy trap to fall into. Again, Ricardo, you're right. You want the Warriors to win, but Boston is legit. Okay, but I mean, how? Because they won the Eastern Conference Finals? Like, I mean, congrats. They got an Eastern Conference Finals trophy. I mean, I don't, like, they squeaked by a Miami Heat team that the Warriors would have pounded silly. Barely beat them. They barely beat a Bucks team that was missing Chris Middleton. This should have been the Bucks in the NBA Finals, not the Celtics. People are just glowing over the Celtics team because they had the second half of the season was incredible. But again, like the Eastern Conference does not impress me that much. They just don't. I'm sorry. And they finished with like the 5th or 6th best record in the NBA overall. Yeah, exactly. And this is a great point as well, too. Josh 90 writes, Boston Celtics, they almost blew that game down the stretch. They did. You don't think the Warriors would take advantage of all those mistakes? And the Heat missed some easy shots, too, at the end there. Major 8 writes, the haters will never admit that Stephen Curry makes his teammates better because they would rather stop Steph and let the others beat them. Dude, he's an all-time great. And it's really sad that at this stage of his career, he's still underrated in a lot of regards. Because you're right, Major. He does make his teammates better. He does, 100%. G Martinez writes, Time Lord ain't right. He's not. Something's wrong with that knee big time. I'm going to do a crossover show with the Locked on Celtics host. I forgot his name. Someone can enlighten me on that. And I'm gonna talk to him about that. We were texting a little bit, and he told me that Time Lord is on a game by game basis. That's his status. Like every day, it's different. There's no way to predict if he's going to play or not. He missed a lot of postseason games. So, Totes McGroats again writes 2 games in between. Yeah, 2 days. You mean? Depends on the game. There's like some that have 3. Did you have the Celtics over the Heat in this Eastern Conference Finals? Simple Pixel Bubble writes. I didn't really have a prediction period. All I kept saying was that people are sleeping on the Heat. Don't sleep on them. Push them to 7 games. I thought the Heat were a great team, but the Celtics are better. Coach writes, Coach, can't wait to see you Thursday. Kerr's going to be coaching a first-year head coach for the 4th time in 6 finals. Yeah, that's kind of wild. A lot of first-time coaches that he's going up against in the finals. What else we got here? Am I running out of comments here? Did I address everything? I wonder if I feel like I wrote some notes here. I want to make sure I tackled all the subjects I wanted to touch. Yeah, I did. Eastern Conference is weak. Let's not forget one other thing too. That's I think is vitally important. As one name I haven't brought up hardly at all in tonight's show is Draymond Green. Now, I've been criticizing the Celtics, and I think rightfully so, for the fact that offensively they don't scare me. All right, and on this week's show, we're gonna bring up a lot of stats. This was just an impromptu, like, okay, Warriors know who they're playing in the NBA Finals. Let's go, emergency pod type show. But I'm gonna have a lot more data for you in the upcoming week for Locked On Warriors. Again, on tomorrow's show, Kevin Dana and Gary St. Jean are going to join me. Former coach of the Warriors. I totally forgot. I was doing a little research on him. I completely forgot he took over for PJ Carlissimo after the choking incident with Latrell Sprewell choked up PJ. I still can't believe that happened. That's crazy. I was in college when that happened. And he's had a very interesting career, and I do love his brain. So we're gonna have some data for you there, big time. But Draymond Green, I mean, when you look at this Celtics lineup, there's gonna be a lot of times where Draymond, and this is where Draymond thrives the most, is when he takes that free safety role, and he oftentimes will double up. He oftentimes will sneak up. He'll just decide who the best player is to defend. His basketball acumen is second to none in the game. And I cannot wait to see him, just the number of steals, the number of blocks. I'm excited for that. One thing that does concern me, and this is going to be the only reason why I think the series could drag to 5, 6, God forbid 7, but it might, is turnovers. We saw the number of turnovers that the Warriors committed against the Grizzlies. I could see that totally happening again against the Celtics team, but I don't think it's going to be at that same clip. And the turnovers go down when they're at home, which is another huge positive for them being at Chase. And yeah, Trey, you're right. Al Horford's no slouch, but again, 5 points tonight. He's hit or miss. He's old. But you're right. Horford isn't a slouch, and he might have gotten weak side help, and Oladipo wouldn't have been open. Yeah, I mean, look, I don't mean to disrespect the Celtics. I think they're a solid team. I just think the Warriors are just that much better. It's just the Celtics just, if you're a Celtics fan, on one hand, you should be excited your team's in the NBA Finals. On the other hand, if you actually study the game and understand it, you're looking at the opposition and going, oh, you know what? Like, that is something we have not faced this playoffs. That is not something that, as good as our defense is, can stop consistently. And that's, and that's not a team that we're going to be scoring on. Every single shot the Celtics put up is going to be difficult. And you're not going to see a lot of points from them. I think the Warriors will fluctuate in terms of the points, depending on the night. Lance Dwyer writes, I think I'm slightly nervous about Boston because even Steph was once a young star without finals experience who took down at least one player who had championship experience. And Lance, I think I've seen you on Twitter. Here's what I'll say to that. You're basically saying that, are you basically insinuating that Jason Tatum is at Stephen Curry's level of greatness? And let's say for the sake of argument that Tatum's there, that he's actually reached that. And Tatum's making some huge clutch baskets, right? Are you also sitting here saying that Jaylen Brown is at Klay Thompson's level? Are you also sitting here saying that Time Lord or Marcus Smart is at Draymond Green's level? Who is at Wiggins' level then? Who is at Otto Porter Jr.'s level then? Who's at, is Time Lord and Kevon Looney comparable? I guess like when you look at the matchups, like who are the Celtics even as you go down the bench? Like who are the Celtics is comparing to Moody? Who in the Celtics compares to Jordan Poole as your sixth man? Because the Celtics sixth man right now is who? Is it Grant Williams? I'm taking Jordan Poole all day, every day. I'm taking Otto Porter Jr. all day, every day. I think Nemanja Bjelica would be like the seventh man on the Celtics roster. That's how deep the Warriors are. So I get it. I get it. I'm not like I had no nerves in my system when the Warriors played the Mavericks and the Nuggets. None. The Grizzlies made me really nervous because again, they're incredibly athletic, they're tough, they're long, and the Warriors did not have home court. They have home court now, and I'm sorry, but I just do not see the Celtics in the same level because they're not as big, they're not as long, they're not as good of an outside shooting team, and I just think the Warriors can stop them, and there's also little things, like, even in that post-game clip I showed you a moment ago after the Warriors beat, the Dallas Mavericks in game 5, when Draymond said, "It's gonna be the Boston Celtics," did he look nervous to you? I read those cues. I do, man. They don't look like a scared team. They don't. The Warriors don't look like the Celtics scare them. And you also add, I wouldn't be surprised if Boston is so tired that they go down in 5 or even 4. Again, and I just don't think the Warriors are built to be this dominating type of team where they're going to sweep. Anything could happen. That's why I'm thinking 5 if they're healthy. If they have health issues, it could go 7. Maybe it'll go 6. I don't know. I just have a hard time seeing the Warriors closing the series out in Boston. DP writes, how many minutes do you think Iggy can play per game? 15? Yeah, that's about right. And 15 minutes from Andre Iguodala would be huge because Iguodala at this stage of his career almost plays like a big. I did not like that he was defending Jokic. That was one of the last times we saw him. I didn't think that was a wise matchup, but that's not who he would be matched up against in this series. If Andre Iguodala plays, he's defending Jaylen Brown. He's defending Jason Tatum. He might defend Al Horford, who is a million times easier to defend than Nikola Jokic. He might defend Grant Williams, but Grant Williams is not really that much of an offensive threat to waste Iguodala's time. So it would more likely be like a Derek White that he'd guard. The point is, Iggy's needed. Those 15 minutes will be huge, and I really hope he plays. And great call here from Orlando 28. The Celtics are just as bad in turnovers per game as the Dubs. You're absolutely right. This is the bottom line for the Celtics. As good as they are defensively, they are not that good offensively. Did I say that right? They are as good as they are defensively. They're not as good offensively. They're not a team that scares me on the offensive side of the ball. They just don't. Strength of numbers writes, the Warriors lead in contested shots. They make it hard for everybody. Absolutely correct. They are the most well-conditioned team in the NBA. The amount of movement they have off the ball destroys teams. There's a reason why Patrick Beverley the other day said when he's going to play Chris Paul, he's having a steak dinner the night before. He's going out, having a good time. And when he plays Steph and the Warriors, he's going to bed at 8 o'clock because they will run you out the gym. They will. The Celtics have not seen anything like this yet. And I addressed this earlier, Trina Depositario. I hope I pronounced that correctly. You're worried about Marcus Smart. I think that is going to be fuel for the Warriors' fire. The Warriors are a bear. Don't poke them. That injury poked a ferocious bear, and you're gonna see them motivated for that. They don't forget things. Like you need to have a killer instinct to be a dynasty. And I mean like almost literally. Like you need to just have a mentality that you're gonna murder your opponent. And they have that mentality. And when their star, like that Warriors team looks at Steph as like their golden child, and rightfully so. And when someone else hurts him, they are not forgetting that. I promise you that. I know some of these players, all right? Not like I'm calling them and hanging out, but we've talked, and then of course I talked to like a lot of people close to the team who tell me how they are, and dude, they have a killer mentality. Like the looks of themselves do not represent the mentality of themselves, if that makes sense. Totes McGoats right. Just don't get Draymond that tech. I think he needs 2 more flagrants. I hope I'm correct on that in order to get the suspension. House of Reason writes, has Rick Barry changed his mind yet? He changed his mind after I think game 3 of the Nugget series. He's all on board. I actually emailed him the link tonight. He was out over in Europe on a cruise for like a week and a half. I just talked to him yesterday, and I was hoping he would come on tonight, but he's having internet issues at his home in Florida. And we're going to be recording a new episode of the Rick Barry Show on Tuesday. I don't know who the guest is going to be yet, but yeah, he changed his tune a while ago. And I am curious to see. I've not picked his brain yet on this series because when we talked yesterday, we didn't know who they were going to play. But yeah, after about game 3 of the Nuggets series, he changed his tune. Like I think a lot of people did. Um Rain King GW writes the backcourt is key. Boston stinks at guard. I guess it depends on who you're talking about. I don't think Jalen Brown stinks, but but the Warriors have a better backcourt. There's no doubt about that. The Blasian Warrior writes, well, I've been here for over an hour. All right, I'm going to wrap this up in a second here, but the Blasian Warrior writes, the Celtics got length, yes, not as long as Memphis. Shooters, yes, not as good as Memphis. And youth, yes, not as young as Memphis. But the Warriors got length, yes. Shooters, yes. A mix of youth and vets, yes. And experience, yes. So hell yeah, all the way, brother. Thank you. I do not read any of these before I say them out loud, so I did not know where that was going. Yeah, I see Derek White does not scare me. I don't know if you folks are chatting with each other at a certain point as well. Yeah, it comes down to this, and I guess I'm going to finish it on this. And again, tomorrow I'll be right back at this tomorrow. Again with Gary St. Jean, super excited he's coming on the program. Kevin Dana, who joins me every Monday. We're going to break this down a lot more, but the bottom line is this: if the Warriors are healthy, and I'm talking like Gary Payne II is playing, Otto Porter Jr. obviously playing, Andre Iguodala playing, this is over in 5. I'm confident of that. But if we're having like injury issues, if Gary Payne II is suddenly missing games, it might go 6, it might go 7. If there's injury issues, I'm going to say Warriors in 7. I love some of these comments. DP writes, GP2's game philosophy: murder, murder, full murder with a lot of blood. Oh yeah, I added the blood part. And I do think this is true as well. Orlando 28. The Celtics are going to try to punch us early because they know if they fall behind, they don't have the stamina to keep up and catch up. They also don't have the talent. This is not like some gangbuster style offensive team. This is not a team that puts up flurries of points. This is a team that grinds it out. This is a team that has a solid defense, and their defense is really their offense. When you see the Celtics forced into typical half court sets, their offense stalls. They don't put up a lot of points. So even if they have the stamina, like I don't want to rule that out. They're a very athletic team, but they just don't have the weapons. They don't have the shooting. They don't have the playmaking. They don't really have a natural point guard. I know Marcus Smart is technically the point guard, but he's not really your traditional type point guard where he's a playmaker with tremendous passing, and his 3-point shot's okay. It's not great. You don't want to leave him open, obviously, but the Warriors have been amazing this postseason in terms of hustle, especially on defense. Like when you see those horrible shooting numbers from a team like the Mavericks, who typically shoot lights out from 3, that's because every single one of those threes, even if it's not a full-on contest, players are running full steam at them with hands right directed toward the face. So Rick VB writes, Marcus Smart could dive into Steph's legs again. That could change the series. Well, it could. I don't anticipate that happening. I think Steph's going to be a little more careful this time. That dude clearly is kind of dirty. The Blasian Warrior writes updates on GP2. There are no updates right now. It's just realistically, I don't think we're going to get formal updates until either Wednesday or maybe game day, which might be actually the right call. I mean, that is a coaching strategy. Leave them guessing. Yeah, I've been doing this for an hour and 5 minutes. Locked On does not like me going over 30. They give me some flexibility once in a while, but anyways, all right. That's it. And I'm exhausted. Dub Nation, I love you. Thank you so much for joining me for this hour plus. This was like therapeutic for me. Burn you, writes the Warriors offense is not the Heat's offense. Exactly. 6 games at the most. I could see it if if refs get involved, if injuries happen, I could see it going 7, but right now, if health abides, Warriors in 5. That is my call. And I thank you all sincerely for just joining the party. Again, tomorrow, Gary St. Jean joins me. Kevin Dana joins me. GTC Reels, thank you. One day at a time. I'm getting there. Folks, mask up, man. There's a lot of cases out there right now. All right. Play it safe at this point until things subside. Joshua writes Warriors in 4. I hope you are correct. I really do. But I think the Celtics will make it at least 5. Blasian Warrior, yeah, we'll be back tomorrow. And like I said, if you follow me on Twitter at DogSurfRoadshow, I try to respond to as many people as possible. Here's my mentality with the media. Like, before, there's a movie that came out in the 1970s called All the President's Men, and it was about, had Robert Redford, Dustin Hoffman. It was about the 2 journalists who took down Richard Nixon, right? Forced him to resign because of their investigative journalism that eventually exposed the corrupt president. And before that movie, like, journalists were viewed mostly as civic servants. Like, think of firefighters, think of teachers, think of police officers. Like, I don't I don't see media people as, and I know this is idealistic on my part, but media people should not be divas. Like, they should not think they're the stars of the show. We should just be here reporting. And in this case, it's a podcast, so obviously I'm going to, have opinions, because what kind of show would this be without that? But like, I don't think I'm better than anyone else. I don't think because I'm, some journalist or whatever, title I have these days, that makes me special. Like, listen, so if you ever like write at me or hit me up on Twitter, I'll try to get back to you there. Yeah, so find me there, please. And just last comments, Donovan Burrell, Warriors in 5. And the whole point of all the President's Men, sorry, is that when that movie came out, people suddenly wanted to be journalists, to be like rock stars, to be like the next journalist to take down a president. And it just got glorified. And the media game just really brought about these huge egos. And it sucks. It's sad. It's just, that's not what the media is supposed to be. And it's a crisis. It sucks. Anyways, I'll stop boring you. Donovan writes Warriors in 5. Right on. Trey Dunn writes, I'll take Warriors in 4, 5, 6, or 7. Absolutely. The less games, the better. But if they win it, if they're hosting that Larry O'Brien, that's all that matters, folks. I love you all. Thank you, House of Reason. Thank you so much. And I'll see you tomorrow. Kevin Dana, the voice of the Santa Cruz Warriors, joins me, as always, every Monday. And Gary St. Jean, former Warriors head coach and general manager, going to be stoked to ramp up the previews for the game 1 of the NBA Finals. The Warriors are going to be pursuing their 4th world title in 8 years. Follow me on Twitter at DogSurfRoadshow. Follow this program on Twitter at Locked On Dubs. Good night, everyone. Sleep good. Later.